They say that just before a great transformation, something within you begins to die. Not in a tragic sense, but in a sacred one. It's the quiet collapse of an identity you've outgrown, the subtle fading of a voice that once defined who you thought you were. You might not notice it at first. It starts with a sense of unease, a strange stillness between your thoughts, or an unshakable feeling that something is calling you from beyond the familiar. If you found this message, it's not by chance. The part of you that has been waiting to awaken has orchestrated this exact moment. In this video, we'll journey into the mysterious space between endings and beginnings. You'll learn why your old self must dissolve before your true self emerges, how the subconscious mind prepares you for transformation, and the secret reason synchronicities multiply when you're on the edge of rebirth. When your old self begins to die, it doesn't announce its departure. It fades quietly, like the last light of dusk disappearing into night. What you often call confusion, burnout, or loss of purpose is actually a psychological metamorphosis. The moment when your inner architecture begins to rearrange itself. The subconscious mind, that vast, unseen field beneath your conscious awareness, begins to release the patterns, beliefs, and attachments that once held your identity together. It's not destruction, it's renovation. The self you've known was built from fragments of memory, emotion, and conditioning. It's the mask that learned to survive. But the soul, timeless, unshaken, infinite, can only emerge when the mask starts to crack. Imagine a snake shedding its skin. From the outside, it might appear uncomfortable, even painful. But from within, it is an act of liberation. The skin doesn't die because the snake is broken. It dies because it has fulfilled its purpose. In the same way, your old self is not your enemy. It's a sacred shell, a container for the lessons that brought you to this exact point in time. The tension, the confusion, the loss of certainty, they are signs that your consciousness is expanding beyond its old container. You are being pulled by something deeper, something ancient, the force of growth itself. Psychologically, this process often begins with dissonance. You start to feel that the life you've been living no longer fits. Relationships feel hollow, routines lose meaning, and the things that once thrilled you now seem strangely irrelevant. This is the subconscious preparing the ground. It's showing you what has expired, what no longer vibrates with your emerging frequency. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of integrating the hidden, unacknowledged aspects of oneself into wholeness. The death of the old self is simply the refusal to keep living as a fraction of your potential. But here's where the mystery deepens. The subconscious doesn't work through logic. It speaks in symbols, synchronicities, and emotion. When your old identity begins to dissolve, your subconscious starts communicating more vividly. You might dream of death or rebirth, water, fire, or falling. You might notice repeating numbers, sudden coincidences, or the uncanny feeling that reality is responding to your thoughts. These are not random. They are feedback signals from your deeper mind, proof that the inner and outer worlds are beginning to synchronize. Synchronicity is how the universe whispers, "Keep going." Think of the subconscious as a vast ocean and your conscious mind as a single wave rising above it. For most of your life, you've believed you are just the wave. Your name, your story, your struggles. But when the wave begins to fall back into the ocean, you realize you were never separate. This is what people describe as awakening. It's not the gaining of new knowledge, but the dissolving of illusion. You don't become more. You remember what you already are. Still, the ego resists. It fears its own dissolution because it equates identity with survival. When the familiar begins to collapse, the ego will project fear. You're lost. You're failing. Something is wrong. But what feels like chaos is actually creation in disguise. Every breakdown contains a blueprint for a higher order. Just as stars are born from the gravitational collapse of cosmic dust, your next self emerges from the implosion of who you once were. This transition often manifests through external changes, friendships ending, careers shifting, environments transforming. These events mirror the inner restructuring. The law of attraction plays its role here. As your frequency changes, your outer reality reorganizes to match it. You may lose what no longer resonates, but what you gain is alignment. People, experiences, and insights that reflect your expanded vibration. This is why so many describe the process as both painful and miraculous. The universe begins to remove what you are not, so that what you truly are can finally breathe. It's important to understand that this death of the old self isn't a single event. It's a rhythm. It comes in waves, each one dissolving a deeper layer of illusion. You may feel cycles of clarity followed by confusion, bursts of inspiration followed by silence. Don't mistake the silence for regression. It's the incubation period between identities, where the subconscious integrates what the conscious mind cannot yet articulate. Like a seed buried in the dark, you are not dying, you are germinating. Every great teacher, mystic, or sage throughout history has described this moment in their own language. The Buddhists call it ego death. The alchemists called it the nigredo, the black stage of transformation before the gold emerges. The ancients saw it as initiation, where the seeker must symbolically die to the old world before entering the mysteries of the new. And in psychological terms, it is the integration of shadow, the acceptance that light and darkness coexist within you. To resist this process is to remain in perpetual fragmentation. To surrender to it is to awaken into wholeness. When you find yourself standing at this threshold, the key is awareness. Witness the unraveling without trying to hold it together. The moment you stop identifying with what is fading, you make space for what is becoming. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding everything that isn't truly you. And when that realization dawns, the fear dissolves. What remains is peace, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstance, belief, or identity, the kind that simply is. The moment your old self begins to crumble, you step into the space between worlds. It's a liminal zone, neither who you were nor yet who you are becoming. Most people panic here because they mistake this emptiness for loss. But this is not the void of absence. It is the womb of creation. Every new version of yourself is conceived here, in silence, in uncertainty, in surrender. You cannot rush this part of the journey. Just as the caterpillar dissolves completely before becoming a butterfly, you must let the structure of your old reality melt into something unseen. That dissolution is sacred. It's the universe reweaving your consciousness into a higher pattern. In this in-between state, the subconscious mind becomes hyperactive. You may notice unusual emotions rising for no clear reason. Grief, nostalgia, even elation. These are echoes of your past selves surfacing for integration. The subconscious doesn't communicate in language. It communicates in vibration. When you feel a strong emotion, it's an old energy pattern asking to be witnessed one last time before it leaves. The mistake most people make is resisting these waves. They try to suppress, distract, or fix them. But emotion, when fully felt without resistance, becomes alchemy. It transforms into awareness. Every tear, every moment of uncertainty is an invitation to let go of the outdated story that has defined you. The dying self is not the enemy of your evolution. It is the bridge to it. Imagine your life as a grand library, each chapter a different identity you've inhabited. To move to the next book, you must close the current one. The ego resists because it wants permanence. It fears being forgotten. But the soul knows that every story, no matter how painful or beautiful, was only a lesson written in the language of experience. When you learn to thank your past selves, rather than fight them, you reclaim their wisdom. The old self doesn't vanish. It becomes the soil in which the new self grows. During this phase, you'll also notice your external reality responding in peculiar ways. People may drift out of your life suddenly. Long-standing plans might fall apart for no logical reason. What's happening beneath the surface is energetic coherence. Your frequency is recalibrating, and anything not in harmony with your new vibration cannot remain. This is not punishment. It's precision. The universe is fine-tuning your environment to reflect your emerging consciousness. The law of attraction works here in its purest form, not as a tool for manifestation, but as a mirror of your inner evolution. You attract, not what you desire, but what matches your state of being. As you shed old layers, synchronicities begin to multiply. You might think of someone moments before they call. You might see recurring symbols, numbers like 1111, animals, phrases that seem to chase you through random places. These are not coincidences. They are messages from your higher mind, confirming that you are aligned with the flow of transformation. Synchronicity is the language of the unified field, the way consciousness speaks to itself through patterns. When you notice these moments and respond with awareness, you amplify their frequency. It's as if the universe begins to speak more clearly because you've finally learned how to listen. One of the most profound aspects of this phase is the disorientation it brings. Your old self operated from certainty, beliefs, routines, roles. The emerging self moves from intuition, fluid and unpredictable. You may feel directionless, but that's because you're learning to navigate through resonance rather than reason. The mind will fight this, demanding clarity, but clarity can't exist where identity is still dissolving. This is where trust becomes your compass. Not blind faith, but deep trust in the intelligence that beats your heart, guides your breath, and orchestrates galaxies. When you surrender to that intelligence, life begins to reorganize itself around your highest good. Consider the ancient symbol of the phoenix. It burns completely, consumed by its own fire, only to rise from the ashes brighter and more powerful. The fire is consciousness. It consumes illusion. The ashes are the remnants of identity, purified and ready to birth something new. That fire, painful though it may be, is not destruction. It is illumination. The heat you feel in moments of crisis is the friction between what is dying and what is being born. If you can remain still within the fire, if you can breathe as your old world turns to smoke, you will discover something extraordinary. You were never the ashes. You were always the flame. This transformation is cyclical. Once you've tasted awakening, life will not allow you to fall asleep for long. New layers of illusion will arise, and with them, new deaths of self. But each time it becomes less terrifying. You begin to understand that what dies is never your essence, only your limitation. The old self must die because it was built upon fear, control, and separation. The new self is not built at all. It is remembered. It arises naturally once the noise quiets. In that quiet, you realize there was never truly a death, only expansion. Psychologically, this process has been described by many thinkers as a dark night of the soul. It's the period when meaning collapses, forcing you to confront the emptiness beneath all illusions. But this darkness is not malevolent. It's medicine. It strips away false light so you can discover your own. Those who surrender to the dark night emerge with a serenity that no external success or comfort can replicate. They move through life with presence, no longer chasing fulfillment because they've become fulfillment itself. So when your world begins to unravel, remember this. It's not the end, it's initiation. You're being invited into a deeper dimension of yourself, one that has been waiting patiently behind every mask, every role, every dream. The old self dies only once, but the soul is eternal. It knows this process by heart. Its wisdom whispers through every heartbeat. Don't be afraid to dissolve. You were made to be reborn. As your old self disintegrates and the new one stirs beneath the surface, the most disorienting experience of all begins. The space of nothingness. This is the sacred void, where the mind can no longer cling to its old definitions, and yet the new self has not fully formed. Here, time feels distorted. Days stretch into silence, and the familiar rhythm of your life begins to lose coherence. This is not failure, it is the purification of perception. When the mind no longer finds solid ground, awareness begins to expand beyond it. You start to realize that identity itself was never real. It was a collection of ideas, like clouds pretending to be the sky. When the clouds dissolve, the vastness that remains is you. This is where many turn back, retreating to the comfort of their old patterns. They try to resurrect the familiar, to rebuild the cage from which they were just freed. But those who stay, who learn to breathe in the void, discover something profound. The silence begins to speak. A deeper intelligence, wordless and ancient, rises from within. This is your higher consciousness, the part of you that never changes, never fears, never dies. It begins to guide you not through thought, but through resonance. You feel drawn to new paths, New people, new possibilities. Not because you planned them, but because they vibrate with who you are becoming. In this stage, awareness becomes your greatest ally. You begin to see how every aspect of your old self was driven by subconscious programs, patterns of fear, desire, and survival. The human psyche is like a labyrinth built by memory. Every reaction, every judgment, every craving is a wall you once built to protect yourself from pain. But as your consciousness expands, you see that the labyrinth was never a prison. It was a lesson. The exit has always been at the center, where awareness rests without resistance. Each time you observe a fear without feeding it, a wound without identifying with it, the walls begin to dissolve. You don't escape the labyrinth, you outgrow it. Ancient mystics understood this process intimately. In Egyptian spiritual tradition, they spoke of the weighing of the heart, a symbolic judgment in which the soul's heart was measured against a feather. A heavy heart, burdened by attachment and ego, could not ascend. A light heart, free of illusion, could. The same law applies psychologically. The more tightly you cling to who you think you are, the heavier your energy becomes. The moment you release the need to define yourself, your consciousness lightens. And this lightness is not fragility, it is freedom. It's the ability to flow with life rather than fight it. You may notice that during this phase, your perception of reality itself begins to shift. Colors may seem more vivid, time may feel slower, intuition sharper. These are not hallucinations. They are glimpses of consciousness freed from its filters. The mind, once cluttered with judgment and fear, now allows more of reality to pass through. This is why mystical experiences often accompany ego death, visions, profound calm, waves of love that seem to come from nowhere. They are not fantasies, but frequencies, your awareness tuning into levels of existence that were always there but previously unseen. When you no longer define yourself as a fragment, the whole becomes visible. But with great expansion comes a paradox: integration. The purpose of awakening is not to escape the human experience, but to embody divinity through it. Many fall into the trap of spiritual bypassing, using higher truths to avoid human emotion. They say, "Nothing matters," or "It's all illusion," yet live detached from reality. True awakening embraces both heaven and earth. It allows you to feel deeply while remaining unshaken, to walk through chaos with peace in your heart, to look at the world, not with judgment, but with compassion born of understanding. This is what it means to be reborn, not to float above life, but to stand in it fully conscious. Psychologically, this stage represents integration of the shadow, the reunion of all the parts of you you once rejected. You begin to see that darkness was never evil. It was misunderstood power. Anger becomes assertiveness, fear becomes clarity, sadness becomes depth. Each shadow you embrace returns to the light as wisdom. The alchemists knew this truth when they wrote, "Visita interiora terrae rectificando invenies, occultum lapidem." Visit the interior of the earth, and by rectifying you will find the hidden stone. The stone was not a literal treasure. It was consciousness purified by self-acceptance. And as this integration unfolds, a quiet miracle occurs. The universe begins to mirror your inner harmony. Opportunities appear without struggle. Encounters feel orchestrated. Time bends to your rhythm. The law of attraction, now operating from wholeness rather than lack, becomes effortless. You no longer chase manifestations because you understand that everything is an extension of your state of being. You attract not by wanting, but by becoming. You realize that the outer world was never separate. It was a projection of your inner frequency all along. In the deepest layer of this awakening, you recognize that even becoming is an illusion. There is no old self or new self, only consciousness shifting shapes. The caterpillar and the butterfly were always one organism. What you thought was death was only transformation viewed from the eyes of fear. From the perspective of truth, nothing ever dies. It merely changes form. Energy cannot be destroyed, it can only evolve. And so can you. When this understanding dawns, life takes on a new texture. Every experience becomes sacred because every experience is seen as consciousness exploring itself. There is no longer a need to seek meaning because you are the meaning. The universe breathes through you, thinks through you, dreams through you. The veil between the seen and unseen thins, and you begin to live in alignment with a quiet certainty. You are not walking toward awakening. You are awakening itself, unfolding in motion. Now that you understand the mystery of transformation, let's bring it back into your everyday life. Knowing that your old self must die is one thing. Living through it consciously is another. The process isn't about escaping reality, but reprogramming your relationship with it. The subconscious mind, the architect of your identity, responds not to words, but to frequency, to emotion, to repetition. So if you want to truly allow the old self to die, you must begin communicating with your subconscious in its native language. Imagery, feeling, and belief. Begin with stillness. Set aside a few minutes each day to sit in silence, not to seek answers, but to listen. The silence itself is medicine. It allows the subconscious to surface. When thoughts arise, do not fight them. Watch them like clouds drifting through a vast sky. Each thought is an echo of the self that is fading, and your act of witnessing without judgment is what dissolves its power. Over time, the mind begins to quiet, and in that quiet, you'll begin to sense a deeper awareness, the presence that has been watching all along. This awareness is the seed of your new self. Next, begin to use the power of visualization. Not as fantasy, but as conscious programming. Imagine yourself walking away from an old version of you, the one defined by fear, by scarcity, by control. See that self fading like an old photograph in the sun. Then, visualize a new version, calm, wise, grounded, luminous. Feel that version breathing through you. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between what is vividly imagined and what is real. The more you inhabit that image with emotion, the faster it becomes your reality. Emotion is the electric current of transformation. Repetition is its magnetic field. Together, they sculpt your inner world, and the outer world rearranges to match. You will also need to rewire your relationship with discomfort. Every moment of inner death brings resistance. Your nervous system interprets change as danger. When fear arises, place your hand on your heart and breathe slowly. Remind yourself, this is not danger. This is transformation. The body listens to the mind's tone. When you bring calm awareness to fear, the nervous system begins to associate expansion with safety. That single shift can change everything. You stop running from growth and begin walking toward it with trust. Start paying attention to synchronicities too. Each time one appears, a repeating number, a meaningful coincidence, pause and acknowledge it. Say internally, I see it. This simple act strengthens your dialogue with the subconscious and the greater field of consciousness around you. The more you recognize these signs, the more frequently they occur. They are confirmations that your vibration is aligning with your higher trajectory. The universe doesn't speak in human language. It speaks in rhythm, pattern, and timing. Learn to listen, not just with your ears, but with your intuition. Another practice, journaling with awareness. At the end of each day, write from two voices, the one that's dying and the one being born. Let the old self speak its fears. I'm scared. I don't know who I'll become. Then let the new self respond with compassion. You don't have to know. You just have to trust. This dialogue harmonizes your inner world. It transforms internal conflict into understanding, and understanding into integration. Over time, you'll feel less like two selves and more like one consciousness in evolution. Remember, death and rebirth are not separate. They are one movement of energy. So don't wait for the perfect moment to begin. Start now by releasing one small thing that no longer belongs. An outdated belief, a draining relationship, a habit that dulls your light. Transformation doesn't demand dramatic change. It thrives in subtle, consistent surrender. The universe doesn't rush, it refines. Each act of letting go is an act of remembering who you really are. As this process unfolds, grounding becomes essential. The more your consciousness expands, the more your body needs stability. Walk barefoot on the earth. Breathe deeply. Drink water with awareness. Feel the rhythm of your heartbeat. The spiritual and the physical are not separate. They are reflections of one another. If your awakening feels chaotic, anchor yourself in simple acts of presence. Touch the world as if it were sacred, because it is. Finally, cultivate gratitude, not as a performance, but as an energetic reality. Gratitude transforms every experience into nourishment. Thank the moments that test you, the silence that unnerves you, the endings that break you open. When you thank the process, you align yourself with the intelligence behind it. Gratitude is the language of completion. It signals to the universe that you've integrated the lesson, and it's time to move forward. Through stillness, visualization, emotional awareness, and gratitude, you begin to cooperate with transformation rather than resist it. You become both sculptor and sculpture, the conscious force reshaping the subconscious clay of your being. And as your old self continues to dissolve, you'll notice something subtle yet unmistakable. Life starts flowing through you, not against you. Opportunities appear effortlessly. Relationships feel deeper, intuition sharpens, and peace becomes your default state. This is the new self. Not a persona to wear, but a frequency to embody. A version of you that no longer needs to prove, chase, or control. One that moves in harmony with the silent rhythm of the universe. And every day you practice awareness, gratitude, and surrender, that version becomes less of a vision and more of a lived truth. You stop trying to become and you simply are. So now you stand at the threshold, the moment between who you were and who you are becoming. The old self has served its purpose. It carried you through lessons you once needed but no longer fit your vibration. You've walked through the fire of uncertainty, learned to see the void as sacred, and begun speaking the secret language of the subconscious. What once felt like loss you now understand as liberation. The death of the old self was never an ending. It was the beginning of truth. From here, every thought, every emotion, every silence becomes a creative act. You are not simply alive. You are awareness itself, sculpting reality with your presence. So take one deep breath, let it fill you completely. And as you exhale, let everything that no longer belongs dissolve into light. You've arrived at the rebirth you were always destined for.